Welcome to TurboBridge. Please enter your conference ID and press the pound key. Please enter your conference ID and press the pound key. Welcome to TurboBridge. Please enter your conference ID and press the pound key. Please enter your conference ID and press the pound key. Welcome to TurboBridge. Please enter your conference ID and press the pound key. Please enter your conference ID and press the pound key.
All right, I will call this Rapid City Area School District Board of Education meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Kate Thomas.
Here.
Was Gabe able to join?
No, he doesn't have service right now.
Okay. Jim Hansen,
Present.
Amy Plisky,
Here.
Clay Colomb,
Here.
Deb Baker,
Here.
Troy Carr,
Here.
Abby Rutan,
Here.
Hayden Bentz,
Here.
and Cole Porter.
Here.
Join us in the invocation with Pastor James Rattling Leaf. Please come up to the podium. Thank you.
I must have got a raise or something. I'm not a pastor. I'm a community member, but I appreciate the sentiment for sure. How mi dakia pi chante washte na pe juzapolo. James Rowling lifi machi api na suichanga Lakota yate himataha. In traditional Lakota society, prayers are often ended by saying midakuye oyasi, or all my relations. This means that all were considered relatives because they were created by the same God and were therefore sacred. Racism and oppression have no place in God's kingdom or family. God commands that we all treat all people the same, even showing mercy to our former enemies if they come to live among us. Much our relationship with God deals with how we treat people, including 6 of the 10 commandments. All are God's creation whom he loves, and we must treat them as such. I will pray this prayer in the Lakota language. Ate wankantanka taku wayang picha na wayang picha heshna na oyate ki iuha wichayake cha shalunya pelo. He uni na peku taku yakhagate ate wankanya pelo. Le ampatu ki taku ki iuha wichaunya nihampelo. Hechel oyate ki ni chichapi he chapi. He wichake shlo unkiya biktalo. Hechetuelo. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag. All right, I need a motion and a second for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Jim and Deb, any discussion?
Ma'am,
Yes.
due to the volume of speakers, I request that we add some time at the end, but unfortunately, due to the volume, we're going to have to cut it down to 2 minutes.
Okay,
That's my motion.
do we have a second motion on that? Second. All right. All those in favor of cutting it down to 2 minutes and extending the time there for however long it needs to, all those in favor? Yes.
Is there room for comments before we vote? Discussion?
Yes, go ahead.
I would prefer not to move the extra time to the end of the meeting.
We're not doing that.
That, you just want to add time on?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
Sorry about that.
So all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right. Now we have the approval of the agenda and a second. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right. Moving on to persons wishing to address the board. I will just reiterate that issues that affect individual matters or particular schools should be addressed at the building level, so staff has the opportunity to address issues that affect them directly. Speakers should focus on their main points and not be repetitive. Personnel matters or complaints that directly or indirectly identify an employee shall not be discussed. And then to maintain a civil dialogue, threats and intimidation are not allowed. And with that, we have our first speaker, Sabrina Johnson.
Good evening. My name is Sabrina Johnson, and I am a teacher for the district. Every other Tuesday while I make dinner, I listen to the board meeting for our district. I watch or listen to fellow educators and community members come here and attack our board members, knowing they cannot defend themselves. I read social media and local newspapers and see the belittling of our board. I can no longer be a bystander. I am here with a plea to stop the attacks. Instead, come up with solutions. talk to the board about the solutions, not all the things they are doing wrong. I encourage you to reach out and meet with our board members. I have met with a few on multiple occasions, and though I don't always agree with them, they are pleasant and listen to my arguments and get an educator's perspective on issues we are facing today. The mass exodus of amazing teachers is worrisome. However, low pay for teachers is not new. When I was first hired straight out of college here 10 years ago, I made $30,000 for 3 years straight. Teacher burnout is not new. Teacher attrition is not new. The mass exodus is not the current board's fault. It has been coming for a long time and is happening all across the country. After speaking with many educators in our district, in my home state of New Mexico, and other friends in various states, I can say with certainty teachers are not leaving because of the low pay. While that may be one of the top reasons teachers are leaving, I do not believe it is the leading cause of our problematic retention of school staff. The stress level we endure is almost unbearable. The disrespect we deal with, having no consequences, backup, or follow through is exhausting. Teachers are leaving because of the unsafe behaviors in our schools by some of our students. There are little or few consequences for out-of-control behavior. There is little follow-through with the consequences that are given. We as a community need to start holding our children accountable for their actions. We need to come together to make our schools safe, inclusive, multicultural, fun places where all students can learn and want to spend their days, where staff feel respected
Sabrina,
at the professional level.
That's time. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that's okay. Thank you.
Next speaker, Mary Hahn.
Thank you. I would point out I would love to meet with any board members, but I have yet to receive a reply to any of my emails to any of you this year, so thank you for that. I would like to spend my time today thanking Dr. Simon for the years of dedicated service to Rapid City area schools and also to the 30-plus years of education service that she has put in over the years. I think it's truly admirable, and it's a big loss to our district to lose a superintendent like that, but I also am grateful that she's showing us what it means to prioritize family and mental health and safety as you step away and into the next chapter of your life with your family. I'm very excited for you. I'd like to thank our student representatives who have served their respective schools with dignity, bringing news and information directly from school grounds, even when it was uncomfortable or when it challenged the narrative that would be easy for the board to cling to. In speaking truth on behalf of the students and schools which they represent, these admirable young people have served to offer insight, transparency, and understanding to the general public, which is often lacking in the communication from the official school board. The school year is coming to a close, and we do have good, qualified educators leaving in droves, and the board has really done nothing but disrespect our public school teachers. I would love to have a conversation with any one of you if you choose to reply to my emails and invitations so that we can talk about ways to keep good educators in our district instead of continuing to lose people who care for our kids, who provide quality education, and who are accessible to students of all backgrounds and all belief systems. Thank you.
All right, next speaker is Shay Beardsley.
Hi everybody, I'm Shay Beardsley. I have been here a couple times. I am a senior at Stevens High School, and I just want to give you an insight into what my day was this morning. I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work at 5, and then I worked until 10:45, and then I went to school at 11:30 till 3. And then after 3, I came here to sit in here and wait so I could talk. And then after this, I'm going straight to softball practice, and then I will get home at about 9 o'clock tonight. So in my busy schedule, this was the most important thing to me today, because I understand that we don't have the destruction of the books on the agenda today, which I don't understand very much because we delayed it the last meeting. But this is very important to me and to the rest of the schools. Instead of focusing on the fact that all of our schools are crumbling and so many teachers are leaving, we're focusing on destroying books that have no merit for being destroyed. Also, I would like to point out that most of these books focus on another perspective that is usually not taught in our schools. Most of the books that are taught in our schools are classics, which are great. I love some of the classics. I love most of the classics. I love reading. But most of them only have the perspective of one type of person, and it's white people. I think it's 3 of the books have a main character that is a person of color, and no one has talked about that one yet. And I just wanted to reiterate how important these books are to me and to so many other kids in our district. Thank you.
Next speaker is Natalie Slack.
Thank you, Board. Thank you, Dr. Simon. Mrs. Miller, Tracy Walding, Amy Berkey, Mr. Rick Radetsky, Leslie Peterson, who retires this year after 37 years, Ms. Kintai, Jennifer Sartorius, Ms. Amundsen, Kelsey Trimble, Elena Simmonsma, Mr. Benny, Mr. Meyer, Mr. Solly, Ms. Timmerman, Jordan Hart, Sarah Sherman, Bill Lenneman, Mr. Whidbey, Marcia Ring, Mr. Lai, Mr. Oakes, Miss Daly, Mr. Fierro, Mr. Bradley, Profa Giffen, Mr. Hasse, Dr. Gross, Miss Tebow, Mr. Speck, Mr. Lohr, Miss Harmon, Miss Haugo. These are all teachers and neighbors and coaches who radically impacted my kids' lives, not through propaganda or indoctrination, but through loving my kids first and the love of learning too. I don't know every teacher my kids have had at the high school level personally, but I do know that every last one of them is a professional, qualified educator who loves expanding minds, seeing kids make connections, and sharing the joy of knowledge. It nears the end of another challenging year of education here in the Black Hills, and if you haven't thanked your kids' teachers, administrators, paraprofessionals, building maintenance and food service, caregivers, coaches, and instructors, please do. Let teachers teach. Let qualified administrators lead. Bring a bond proposal to build facilities and programs that meet students' diverse needs. Let readers read. Keep students alive. Congratulations to my son Christian and his Rapid City class of 2022, and to the teachers who brought our kids this far. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, David Eggers.
Thank you. I want to lend my support to the students, teachers, and parents objecting to the pulling from the shelves and proposed destruction of 5 contemporary books meant to be read by local high school seniors. This book ban deprives ambitious young students of access to contemporary texts, and it deprives teachers of control over what they teach. Both deprivations are un-American. Book bans are profoundly, deeply un-American. It is particularly troubling that in the shadow of Mount Rushmore, this fear of ideas is allowed to take root. The 4 men depicted on that mountain were all voracious readers, unafraid of any idea, and committed to freedom at all costs. I have a friend who is an admiral in the Navy. He's become a novelist. I told him about what was happening here. I asked him if he had any words, and he wrote this email. 2 minutes after I asked him, he asked if I could read this to you. This is from James Stavridis, who was Admiral in the Navy, the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO from 2009 to 2013. At the heart of America is an open society that must be unafraid, indeed fearless, to face ideas that can be difficult, challenging, and in conflict with established norms. The worst aspect of totalitarian dictatorships is their insecurity, which leads them to shy away from the deeply important conversations that frame the great issues we must face together. Thus, they censor what they fear most. When I think of literature in this vein, I am struck by the warnings and courage of books like Fahrenheit 451, Brave New World, This Perfect Day, 1984, among many others. When a society becomes afraid of listening, arguing, and therefore learning, it is doomed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Kara Flynn.
Hi, my name is Kara Flynn, and I speak to you tonight as a parent, a former board member, and the executive director of the Rapid City Public School Foundation, because this is Shirley Fletcher's last board meeting. And I want the whole public and all of Rapid City area schools to know that Shirley is an outstanding executive assistant to the Board of Education and to Dr. Simon and to the whole district. And she keeps us all in line and makes sure we all know how to contact who we need to contact. She reaches out to make sure that you have everything you need. She gets this agenda put together on time and gets everything filed so we meet all the Open Meetings Act requirements even when she's on vacation. And I just really think that all of Rapid City needs to really thank Shirley, because she always does this with a smile, a laugh, and a kind word. And her compassionate competence, because she is the utmost professional, will be missed by us all. So thank you, Shirley.
Next speaker, Blala Bush. Sorry if I got that wrong. This is, can you tell me your name?
Blake Bush,
Blake.
Sorry. My handwriting is a little poor, but it's okay. I'm here today as a senior theater student and literature student from Central High School. I think it's fairly obvious why I'm here. I disagree with the proposed and since removed notion of destroying the books that were marked for destruction. I oppose it, not because I don't think that there isn't material in these books that is objectionable to some, but I would say that that does not matter. It is the inclusion of these uncomfortable scenes that pushes forward the ideas that literature and literature alone can convey. It is important to include these scenes to the story. It is important to include those two lines that may be objectionable to few. Might I add that these books were also choice reads, and if one felt that they did not wish to read such material, that they did not have to. But I am also here to support art, which is what writing is. And to destroy art, to destroy knowledge in such a form would be, frankly, un-American, but also inhuman. It is destroying human connections, it is destroying human experiences, and it would take away a lifeline that many students have through art. Saving students' lives, as Ms. Slack mentioned, is incredibly important, especially now. There's a reason that every Central High School ID has the suicide hotline printed on the back. It is because it is an incredible issue that is facing us today. And I would say that these books that were marked for destruction would help each student struggling with that should they decide to read it. I know this is heavy, and I know that it is uncomfortable. That's the point.
I'm sorry, that's time.
Thank you.
Yep. Holden Porter.
Oh, is this thing? Okay, perfect. This thing's on. Good evening, board. I'm not used to speaking from this part of the stage, but it's nice to see all your faces from this angle. I'm here to speak to you once again about the books. And I understand that this was not your choice to put this on the agenda at the last meeting. I understand that it's not on this board's agenda tonight, but I leave in 3 weeks to go pursue secondary education, and I don't know if I can be here to speak about it when it's back. So here I am tonight. These books, regardless of how important I may think they are or that you may think they are, there are students not only in this room but in all three high schools, our middle schools and elementary schools that read, and they find importance in the smallest things. And for me, I may not read The Circle or A Fun Home Tragicomic or the other 3 books that I didn't mention, but to some people those books are everything. These books are important to these kids, and I think it's important that these books be proliferated to those kids that choose to read it. And furthermore, as someone who is leaving to enter the world in 3 weeks, I think it's sad and disrespectful to us seniors to be told what is appropriate for us to read as we encounter our society. We are encountering great political and cultural controversies every single day. And so for us to be told what we can or cannot read is disrespectful. I think that students have a right to read. I think students have a right to learn. And to my final point, I think students have a right to be listened to. I know that you have sided with administration in their decision, and I completely respect you for standing up for the people that you serve, but I also know that you serve us as students. And I would love it if you would listen to us on this decision on future board agendas. Thank you.
Next speaker, Kurt Pokart.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Good to see you again, old friends. I'm here tonight to say a lot of the same things that my friend Kara Flynn did a few minutes ago about my good friend Shirley Fletcher. Yeah, I'm going to embarrass you again, Shirley. Most of you would have a hard time remembering where you were 22 or 23 years ago when Shirley came to work for this district. But she has worked continuously and with commitment and dedication beyond what most of us would ever expect. Illness, injury, it didn't matter. Shirley was there. She was the rock. She's seen a lot of staff come and go. Most of the staff in the district has turned over since her first day. She's seen a lot of board members come and go. She's seen issues and crises and problems, and she's been there every day. And I just want to thank you, Shirley. I know all of you saw what I did when I sat where Kate sits and where Jim sits and Clay and Amy. Nobody sees behind the scenes the effort that it takes to keep this thing running. One of my favorite stories that Dr. Simon ever told, and I've probably run out of time here, was when Shirley was keeping the store open. Dr. Simon was on vacation, had grandkids visiting, and Dr. Simon got a call from Shirley, and they had a fairly lengthy conversation about what was happening in the district, and Dr. Simon hung up the phone, and one of the grandkids said, "Who was that?" Well, it was Shirley. "Is she your boss?"
That is time. You can finish it up if
Thank
you
you.
want to. Okay, thank you. Next speaker, Deb Trask.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Deborah Trask, and I'm the parent of 12th graders in the district. My children joined the district in 2016 after 4 years in a neighboring school. First and foremost, I am glad my kids went to a Rapid City school. They were afforded opportunities here, specifically in the music department, that far outweigh what was available to them previously. This will benefit them their entire lives. But I'm speaking to you, board members, as a parent that's counting down the days to graduation. The stakeholders you serve deserve more from you. They deserve better. The stakeholders I speak of are not who elected you. They're not who voted for you. They aren't who donated to your campaigns. The stakeholders you serve are the students, all of them. The stakeholders you serve deserve engaged, respected, and trusted teachers. The stakeholders you serve deserve to be challenged and exposed to all points of view, not just those deemed safe and appropriate, but the points of view that may feel uncomfortable, the points of view that may be lacking in Rapid City. I speak specifically on the 5 books selected for English 12 that were deemed controversial and pulled from the curriculum. When my children graduate in less than 14 days, I have to believe that I, as their parent, have given them tools to be successful. I also trust and pray that their teachers and administrators, some of whom they have known all 4 years of high school, some who have followed their success since 6th grade, gave them tools that I could not. I am not a trained, certified, and credentialed educator. I don't have the skill set, the patience, the selflessness that they as educators inherently possess, especially patience. My kids are a lot. Those 5 books were not on my radar until 2 weeks ago.
I'm sorry, that's time. Next speaker, Timmy Bubak.
Hi, Board. I'm Timmy Bubak. I am a teacher in the district. There is a mass exodus of teachers right now, and those who have chosen to stay say they are increasingly feeling undervalued and disrespected. This disrespect doesn't come from colleagues, students, or building administrators, but it seems most often these voices of disrespect for teachers are coming from a few in the community who, some of which no longer even have school-age children. A couple of weeks ago, there was a statement from this board questioning some teachers who gave of their personal time, away from their families, away from some of their second jobs, to design new curriculum. The statement questioned whether these teachers committed a crime whilst doing this work. I personally know all of these people, these teachers, who were accused of committing a crime. If you stepped into any one of their classrooms, you would be blown away at their passion for educating all students, for making a difference in the lives of your kids. It's incredibly disappointing that this unsupportive statement came from this board. I recently heard someone say that to build rapport and morale, an organization needs to make their people feel valued and heard. It's okay if there's a difference of opinion about what should be included in a curriculum. But to accuse teachers of breaking a law is very disappointing leadership. It feels like threats. It feels like intimidation. It feels like the opposite of making people feel valued and heard. I would love to work in a district where the school board speaks more favorably about the teachers that educate their children, even in the midst of a difference of opinion. And so for that reason, I would like to extend an invitation to every single one of you sitting up there today. Please come to my classroom. Come talk to me. Ask me questions. Talk to my students. Ask them questions. Look at what we're reading. Look at what we're doing. Please. You'll see that we are compassionate, hardworking people trying to educate all students.
That's time.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Simon, so much.
I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name of this next speaker, but Jamie Al-Haj. Correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Got it right.
Thank you.
Most people don't get it on the first time. My name is Jamie Al-Haj. I've been a resident of Rapid City for 35 years. I have 2 daughters that were fortunate enough to be part of the Rapid City area schools. The youngest one has graduated in 2020. I'm speaking tonight as a co-president of the AAUW, the Rapid City branch. That is the American Association of University Women, an organization whose mission is to promote equity to women and girls through education and advocacy. The proposed destruction of 350 books is very disturbing to us. I come tonight with a proposed solution. We are hoping that Rapid City area schools may consider donating these books that have been deemed surplus and were originally destined to be destroyed. If our organization has had, since the 1960s, an annual book sale, I believe it's the largest in the community. The proceeds from the book sale go to funding educational scholarships for women in the Black Hills area. Since this item was not on tonight's agenda, I assume that the decision on how to dispense of these books may still be undecided. The historical images of book burnings should be etched in everyone's mind. Rapid City can do better than this. We hope you will consider our offer as a better alternative than the destruction of these 5 nationally acclaimed books. As said by the philosopher George Santayaro, when we do not learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. Again, I hope you may consider our proposal. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Carrie Stover.
Good evening, I'm Carrie Stover. I teach English at Rapid City Central. When working on my master's degree in school counseling years ago, I remember a professor telling us, okay, school counselors, you got to be cool. If you're going to get kids to open up to you, you have to be cool. Though I had been in the classroom only 3 years at that point, I knew right away he was wrong. Cool is not what kids need from adults. They need real, they need genuine, they need honest. That is what I expect from my students and what I work to offer them every day. There are 3 major avenues by which this offering realness occurs: through my behavior, through sharing writing, and through reading stories together. Books are my classroom tools for connection and my reason for speaking today. After 25 years working in this school district, I am accustomed to criticism about teachers. Recently, though, the criticism feels personal. It bothers me that people who don't know me question my professional integrity because I am open to putting difficult and sometimes controversial material in the hands of students. Going a step further, it's obvious that some do not trust teachers or students with challenging, raw, uncomfortable reading material. Hence the list of 5 book titles to be destroyed by our district without any conversation with stakeholders. This lack of trust, based on what I truly do not know, minimizes teachers' professionalism, underestimates students' intelligence and common sense, and undermines their desire to grow up and learn and find their place in life. Most students are a lot wiser and more street savvy than some grown-ups choose to believe. While they don't always love learning about commas or even reading books, they are in general seekers of the knowledge and experiences found in literature. Seniors especially have the capacity to maturely navigate this reading material, and all students always have the guidance of a professional hand while doing so. If there is a student who cannot navigate
That's time. Sorry.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Sadie Callback.
Hello, my name is Sadie Colbeck. I'm a senior at Stevens High School. Just a little bit about me. I'm a 3-year letter winner in choir. I'm a 1-year letter winner in drama. And I'm also the acting chairperson of the Rapid City Youth City Council, so I know what it's like to stand up there. I come to you today after a meeting yesterday over the books you have pulled, not only to be banned, but to be destroyed. Some of the people who are there are here today. One of the authors that spoke earlier, Dave, is here today. I know that this item you will not go over today, but I want you to think about the lives that will be impacted if you do burn these books, because you're not just banning these books, you're destroying them. You're taking away the access to books to 12th graders, 11th graders, and 10th graders, even freshmen. These books were in our libraries, and they are not anymore. They are not there. And I looked in many places, and they're not there. They deserve to be there, because most of us are 18 that were to read these books. So we could just go buy them. But it is important that our schools stand up for us and tell us it's okay to read these things. One of the many quotes that came to my mind yesterday was, once we read something uncomfortable, that's when learning and growth start. You need to keep in mind the students that you are affecting when you burn books, when you ban books, and when you tell students no. Thank you.
Next speaker, Florence Thompson.
Good evening, Board. I'd like to say I do appreciate what you're doing. I'm president of South Dakota Parents Involved in Education, and I noticed you've been getting hammered pretty hard tonight. I noticed also that Elevate had their candidate debate for school board members tonight during your meeting. So we're spread pretty thin as far as getting here to support you, and I apologize for that. The union can turn out an endless number of people. There's been a whispering campaign against this board, all sorts of lies and innuendos about how the board has behaved toward teachers, how the board doesn't appreciate teachers, just awful stuff. that I know is not true. And this is circulating with students, by teachers, other staff members, circulating all around the district, trying to affect the election, trying to flip the board back to a liberal board. And basically, the community doesn't want that, and I don't think they're going to succeed in that. So anyway, I'd just like to say that I really think this board's done a good job. I think they've showed courage. I think they've showed judgment and patience. I think that they have tried to see all sides and try to find the right path through, and they have been listening to parents. They've been listening to students. I'm sure they've been listening to teachers as well. It's just not true that this board is against teachers, and that's just an outrageous lie. So I hope that nobody falls for that. It looks like the media is picking it up and running with it, and I do appreciate what all you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Carolyn Hofer. Hofler, sorry.
Good evening. Parents have chosen to partner with the schools in good faith that their children would be receiving the best education possible. The public schools have not been immune to the political and sexual indoctrination being implemented in a school curriculum, and that includes the school libraries. Teachers are given a great amount of trust with children that are not theirs, and how a parent's been rewarded with that trust is with this kind of book. The pictures in this book aren't just nipples. It's great detail zoomed into pictures of the genitals of adults, some of them performing oral sex on each other, and that's the truth. These teachers came up with these books to be used as curriculum, and that means that they would have had to have a syllabus to include tests and quizzes and discussion questions. They knew what was in this book, and they brought it in anyway. And thank God that we had some principals who saw this and put a stop to it. And the board's stance on protecting kids from pornography was a necessary act and a true act of leadership. And I thank you for that. Teachers, I think, have to come to the realization that they can't just say, teach, and show whatever they want to children that aren't theirs. There does have to be some boundaries and parameters. And I want to remind the district that the teachers, that you have a sacred duty to offer the highest educational standard, to protect children from abuse, and to respect the rights of parents, because whose children are they? Students don't belong to the schools. The teachers do not co-parent these students. That is not their role. That's the role of a parent. Parents raise our children with the values that we see fit, and the school district and the teachers have no right to undermine those values. Schools have immense amounts of power over coercion, over education, and over people's children. And it's time to give that power back to the parents. It is not the parents.
That's time.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, Sarah Gross.
Hello and good evening. I have 3 items I'd wish to speak on this evening: pay and negotiations, a search for a superintendent, and lack of a strategic plan, and integrity. First, I want to thank you all for working with the Teachers Association, the representatives from the Teachers Association, to disseminate the 6% that we received from the state. As a veteran teacher, I was never leapfrogged. I did leapfrog other people, I'm sure. And so I made 2.75% is what will be added on next year. But there are people in my building who got like 10 or 11% because of the time of their entry. And so I really want to thank you for working and meeting, I think, 7 different nights for multiple hours at a time. That's a big deal. I think that you can't do anything about the inflation rate of 7.5% and the fact that I only got 3%, except advocate at the state level with our legislators. We need more money directed from the state. Even though our property taxes have gone up, it's not enough to keep us competitive. Second, I was hoping to have an update on the search for a superintendent. Like many, I thrive on stability and predictability. Without a strategic plan, no assistant superintendent named, and an interim superintendent still posted on the website, I'm curious who will be running the district as of July 1st. And finally, this may seem dramatic, but these are not my words. Grr, my hackles are up. Am I a leftist buffoon who constantly lectures the world? I certainly don't feel like one. That's not me. And I emailed many of you about a campaign letter that went out to the Area 6 families. And it says they failed us in every possible way. And keeping with my theme that I've spoken to you with over the year, we have not failed. We have some disagreements, but we have not failed. And I think that narrative
that's time, Sarah.
is what has led to this
Gross,
instance
that's
with
time.
the book banning and destruction. And
Next
so
speaker is Heather Baxter.
you have a great responsibility and a voice. Please speak out against that type of campaigning and politicism.
Thank you. Heather Baxter.
Good evening, Board. My name is Heather Baxter. Thank you for your time and hard work. Keeping every person content in this community has to be a daunting challenge. The RCAS High School Handbook says the following: computer use. Access of the Rapid City Area School District offers computer/network access to students/staff for educational purposes in various instructional activities. You will not use or post obscene, profane, lewd, vulgar, rude, inflammatory, threatening, or disrespectful language in public messages, private messages, and/or material posted on the web pages. Failure to comply with any of the above terms and conditions shall result in disciplinary action and may become subject to legal action, either civil or criminal, as appropriate. Under the dress expectations, it says, we realize parents and students are subjected to numerous advertising pressures in terms of dress and grooming. To assist you in your students' grooming decisions and the purchasing of appropriate school clothing, the school has established the following dress grooming standards: wearing clothing or grooming in a manner that is sexually explicit/distracting or which conveys sexual innuendo or that may reasonably be construed as sexual, wearing of clothing or grooming that is potentially disruptive to the educational process, wearing clothing or accessories that include words, pictures, or symbols which are obscene, vulgar, abusive, discriminatory, or which promote or advertise alcohol, chemicals, tobacco, or any product that is illegal for use by minors. The book Fun Home, not to mention the other four of contention, includes but is not limited to drugs, homosexuality, masturbation, nudity, pictures of lesbians having oral sex while talking how it tastes, vulgar language, and other visual pictures. Again, referring to what the school handbook says about what you can and can't do on computers and what you wear. I'm just curious if my teenagers, that must mean that they could not wear pictures from these books or some of the stuff that's setting these books on clothing, because I presume that as above it says disciplinary action would be taken.
Thank you, Ms. Baxter. That's time. Speaker is Ed Manzano.
Thank you, Board. I don't believe in banning books, but I think that we need to remember that the books were removed by RCAS school staff due to inappropriate content. South Dakota codified laws has very severe penalties for minors viewing pornography. The RCAS Senior Student Handbook Matrix has penalties for seniors who view pornography and even defines pornography in the student handbook. I believe this issue never would have happened if the district had followed code IFP, which is found in the Policies and Procedures tab of the school website, page 1. The Board of Education supports the fullest possible participation in determining its educational program and selecting instructional materials. The advice and involvement of staff, parents, and students shall be sought and utilized. But I don't believe that was done in this case. Second one is District Code IIAA-P on instruction says the Board of Education recognizes the right of parents to influence the education of their children. In order to maintain this balance of rights, responsibilities, and freedoms, it will be the policy of the board to make the print or online curriculum programs available for review by parents, students, and citizens of the community. Again, if this had been followed, perhaps we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. In short, parents have the right to be in charge of their child's education. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Christine Stephenson.
Good evening. I just want to take a minute. Students, I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much for showing up. Mr. Eggers, thank you for being here. I read your book, A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius, and it changed the way I thought about literature and writing and storytelling. But not here tonight to talk about that. I am here tonight, as you all know, I was a school board member from 2017 to 2020, and those were the heydays of the Rapid City School District under the leadership of Dr. Lori Simon. If you weren't on the board, you don't know. We were focused on improving results, and Dr. Simon would come to meetings and had proposals, and we would talk to people, and pre-COVID days were wonderful. I feel like because of COVID, a little bit of the recognition might get lost of the work that Dr. Simon did, so I'm here tonight to thank you, Dr. Simon, for all the work. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Simon lost sleep. She compromised her health at times. I was worried. Sacrificed time with family for this town that you just joined, and you didn't have to give your heart and soul to the district, and you did. And it means so much to me, and it means a lot to the people in this town. I was heartbroken when you were leaving, but I wish you the best. Thank you. Shirley, thank you too. Goes without saying, and it's already been said. Just a note to the board, I'm concerned that a search committee hasn't been formed to replace Dr. Simon. Truly, the amount of knowledge about pedagogy and education, as well as organizational management that it takes to run this region's 4th largest employer is beyond my comprehension. Your lack of a plan indicates that potentially you think that the board might be able to run the district with, do the supervision of the managers and the senior leadership team.
Thanks.
I think that's a really
Next speaker is Justin.
bad idea that you should think twice about. Thank you.
Good evening, board. Justin Harriman, live in Rapid City, have 3 students enrolled in the district, and came to talk about 3 different points. I'm not speaking from a script. I'm extemporaneously speaking a skill that I actually learned while enrolled in the Rapid City Area School District, and I see a teacher sitting on the board who actually gave me my first euphonium lesson a few years ago. We'll just say a few years ago, and thank you, Mrs. Bray, for stepping up for our district. We appreciate you very much. Dr. Simon, thank you. You have done some amazing things for our community. We see you attending our children's events. I see you at concerts that my children play in. I see you in the community. Your advocacy and leadership for our students in our district have been amazing, and you have done some wonderful things for our community. I know that there are some folks that maybe not agree with every decision that you're made, but that's really, truly what leadership is about, is making those hard choices. We appreciate you very much. Shirley, I don't need to say anything else except you're wonderful. Thank you for everything that you have done for our district. You need at least 15 standing ovations. And I also want to say thank you to all of the teachers, administrators, janitors, paraprofessionals, support staff, information technology professionals, everyone who really makes public education work in our community. I have a lot of friends that work for the district, and you know what? There's not a single Marxist amongst them. They're honestly wonderful, valuable community members who do great things for our students, and my children love them all. So thank you very much, everyone in our community. And then all the community members who are here advocating and really putting our students and our school first. I'm worried that we don't have a superintendent being searched for. It's very concerning. That other district in Colorado does not compare to ours. There's not an equitable comparison, and trying to use that model is not going to work. It is a terrible business decision. So please find us a superintendent.
That's time. Thank you.
We need leadership.
Last speaker, Trevier Craddock.
Hey, so I am Trevier Craddock out of CU Boulder. I am the current treasurer of the Turning Point USA chapter, and I'm here to thank you guys, not only the administration but the school board, for cutting the indoctrination of our youth out, because locally, teaching these students about sex, there's a time and a place for everything, and that is not in a public school system. And I'm like really here because I know you guys are taking a lot of heat. I'm here helping campaigning for our primary right now in South Dakota, and I know that you guys are getting a lot of heat for it, but I really want to show my empathy for you guys because I know it wasn't an easy decision, and you can't make everybody happy, but there's a time and a place for indoctrination, and that is not in the public school system, and I really just applaud you guys for that, and it takes a lot of dignity and courage to do that. I know you guys got a lot of people against you right now, but you're keeping this place, you know, American, and indoctrinating the students for books that should not be shown in schools is just like an act of leadership, and I really support that, and I appreciate it, and it gives me like a breath of fresh air knowing that there's a state that actually has some sense of God and urgency in their system, and I just really want to, you know, appreciate that and show my respect. So, yeah.
Thank you. All right, that is the last of the speakers. Thank you for all that spoke. We are on to sharing the success. We have the recognition of student representatives.
President Thomas and board and student reps, would you please join me in front of the dais? All right. We have no handheld mic, so we're going to be adaptable here. So forgive me for sort of talking sideways here. But tonight, we're here to recognize our three stupendous yet departing board representatives. Tonight is their last meeting with us, and we just want to recognize all three of you for your dedication, your great reports, really all your efforts this year as student reps to the Board of Education. Truly, we have appreciated your work this year, and we have a couple of departing gifts which we'll give to you shortly, but I would like to invite President Thomas also to share a few words with you.
Okay, so the board would like to thank our three student representatives for their outstanding representation of their schools, and we wish you all the best in what your plans are going forward. In recognition of your outstanding effort and engagement in this process, each of you will receive a $1,000 stipend. We would like to thank the following sponsors for their generous donations that made this possible: Black Hills Harley-Davidson, Skull Construction, and Unify Home Lending Incorporated. Thanks again for your dedication to your school and this board. We wish you all the best.
Entertaining us.
Now we're going to get an official photo before we all run back, so smile pretty, everyone.
And so with that, these must be the last report, but will probably be the best. No pressure. Just kidding. Colton Porter, Central High School.
Oh man, I'm nervous. No, I'm just joking. Good evening, board. Obviously, my name is Colton Porter, and I hope everyone's having a good week so far. To kick off my report, I'm going to start with arts news. Jazz in the Square, an event hosting all kinds of jazz and funk bands of all grade levels and of all schools, was held last Saturday, actually, at Main Street Square. It was a pretty good thing. The final orchestra concert of the year is being held tonight, and the Pops Choir concert will be held this Friday. Next week, Monday, the Performing Arts Awards will be held. This is a night where the choir, theater, orchestra, and band programs at Central hold a ceremony to honor the success of the students in their program. Finally, the Epiphany Awards will be held next Thursday at 5:30. Moving on, this week is National Police Week, and so I would like to say thank you to not only the liaison officers at Central High School, but to all of the officers in our district whose sole job is to protect students and staff. Oh, and by the way, Jim Hansen was a liaison officer at Central, and so thank you for the work that you did protecting us. Moving on, this week there will be a powwow held at Central, and the annual feathering ceremony will be held next Wednesday at 6 p.m. On the academic side of things, finals week is next week, and the schedules have been openly distributed across the school. In senior news, the annual grad walk is this Friday. This is an event where graduating seniors go around to elementary schools in the district to show these young learners the end goal. And furthermore, senior breakfast will be held on May 27th at 8:30 in the morning, and graduation rehearsal will follow the breakfast. That's all I have for you is a really quick report, but I did just want to say thank you, board, for giving me this opportunity to sit here at the dais and see the democratic process. The 2.5 months I've been here have truly changed my life, and I hope maybe one day I'll sit in your seats. So, thank you.
Oops. Abby Rutan from Rapid City High School.
Thank you. Rapid City High School is excited to announce the second semester Rushmore Rotary Students of Distinction. The Rushmore Rotary Club has been a longtime supporter of Rapid City High School. Each semester, they recognize a distinct learner from each grade level. This semester, there were over 50 nominations of learners from Rapid City High School staff. The second semester Rotary Club Student of Distinction winners are 9th grader Emily H., 10th grader Carly P., 11th grader Nathaniel G., and 12th grader Richard C. On behalf of the entire student body at Rapid City High School, we want to publicly congratulate these learners for being respectful, present, and courageous learners. As the end of the second semester quickly approaches, Rapid City High School is preparing for an adjusted final schedule next week. Staff have selected to implement a 2-day final schedule, the 25th and 26th. This schedule allows for more time in each class to complete final tests and/or final projects. It also gives ample time for learners to spend working one-on-one with staff to complete any remaining course learning outcomes. As you are all aware, this time of year is packed with end-of-year celebrations. The celebrations begin with an annual grad walk this Friday. Seniors from Rapid City High School will be joining the seniors from Central High School to spread the joy of graduation to the elementary students. On behalf of all the graduating seniors of Rapid City High, I would like to invite the Board of Education general public to 3 distinct celebrations next week. On May 25th, the feathering and honoring ceremony will take place at the Barnett Arena starting at 5:30 p.m. On May 26th, the GED completion ceremony will take place at Rapid City High School starting at 6 p.m. And finally, on Friday, May 27th at 7 p.m., Rapid City High School will hold its graduation ceremony in the Historic Theater. We welcome everyone to attend and celebrate with us. As a graduating senior myself, I would like to take a moment to express my gratitude. It has been an honor to represent my school as a student representative on this board. Thank you for welcoming me and encouraging me and listening to my reports. At the center of everything this school district does are learners like me working hard to reach graduation day. The entire school district, teachers, paraprofessionals, secretaries, nutrition services, custodians, classmates, administration, school board, and all the behind-the-scenes offices, thank you for the years of support as I discovered my path. In closing, I will remind you of our school-wide expectations at Rapid High. Be respectful, be present, be courageous. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and Hayden Benz from Stevens High School.
Thank you, President Thomas. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, my name is Hayden Benz, and I'm the student representative to the Board of Education from Stevens High School. It has been a busy last couple of weeks at Stevens, with dozens of activities taking place. At the top of my report, I would like to mention that Stevens recently received data on the student population's most recent ACT scores. Every Stevens student took the standardized test, producing an average score of 20.5, a figure which is higher than the average of other states who also test every student. It is a data point which highlights the superb students and teachers Stevens has to offer. In fine arts, the band held their final concert of the year this past Thursday. All three of the bands performed great and deserve recognition for all of the hard work and dedication they have poured into their craft. Additionally, the final orchestra concert will be tonight, something which I will be headed to as soon as I finish my report. The choir will give their last concert of the year on Friday, and senior-directed one-acts for the drama department will take place on Saturday. Next week, for the first time ever, music students will have the opportunity to participate in a signing day event if they are continuing their music career in college. It is a wonderful opportunity for those students to be recognized and celebrated for their phenomenal achievement. Stevens Athletics are wrapping up their spring campaigns, with track, girls golf, boys tennis, and baseball all approaching the finish line. Their respective state tournaments will all take place in the coming weeks, which also makes things a little challenging for seniors who have to quick race home for graduation after competing the day before. I would also like to give a special shout out to junior Simeon Birnbaum, who continues to break records left and right, most recently setting the state record for the 3200 race, which he completed in 8 minutes and 55.22 seconds. He undoubtedly has a bright future ahead of him. This is also where I have poked fun at Central a little bit this is also where I would have poked fun at Central a little bit for the Raiders baseball team beating Central last Thursday. But the game was unfortunately rained out. Instead, we'll have to wait for the outcome tomorrow night when it will be played. For now, take comfort in knowing that Stevens still beat Central in football, basketball, volleyball, wrestling. Well, you get the idea. This Thursday, Honors Convocation will take place in the Stevens Gymnasium, recognizing students who will be graduating with honors, as well as those receiving a scholarship from a school organization. In total, 54 students will be graduating with cum laude honors, 44 with magna cum laude, and 111 with summa cum laude. Congratulations to all of these individuals on their exemplary work at Stevens. Stevens graduation will take place the following week on May 29th at 5 p.m. in the Summit Arena at the Monument. Lastly, I would like to thank Dr. Simon, President Thomas, and the rest of the Board of Education for giving me, Abby, and Colton the opportunity to have our voices heard this past school year. It is so important to have student input on decisions that will directly affect students, and I feel honored to have been given the chance to represent my peers by doing just that. I would strongly encourage the continuation and expansion of this program, as it has provided me with an invaluable experience. With that, I would like to remind you all there is nothing greater than being a Raider. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will definitely miss you guys. But again, best of luck to your endeavors. All right, there is no conflict of interest waiver turned in, so we are on to the approval of the consent agenda. I need a motion.
So moved.
Jim and Troy. Anybody want anything pulled? All right, then all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, consent is approved. Down to the first readings, and we have none for this meeting, and to the reports of the superintendent. Information items, the first three are with Jackie Talley. The first one is Feeding South Dakota. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Feeding South Dakota, we'll start with that one. That actually is a grant proposal to provide North Middle School and Central High School with $3,000 for a Feeding South Dakota pantry. It would include freezer, cooler, shelving, carts, bag holder, and tablet for data management. I think it's a great opportunity, especially in light of our large homeless population and those others in need of food.
Go ahead and go on to the next one.
I believe it's the Northman Group that's next.
Northrop.
We were very fortunate to receive, and thank you, Dr. Simon, for receiving the check on behalf of the school district last Friday during the air show. The Northman Grumman donated $35,000 to Rapid City area schools to support our middle and high schools, our students to attend science camps over the summer. Each camp cost about $250, and so we're really excited that all of our 8 secondary schools can be a part of that. Dr. Luthold, who works in our teaching and learning department, is working with all secondary schools to identify those students and get them signed up for the summer.
Thank you. That is great honor.
McKinney-Vento. I have a lot, so. The next one is our McKinney-Vento grant, and that is our formula grant for next year. And so what I'm requesting is permission to go ahead and apply for that grant. It is right now approximately $350,000 for the 22-23 school year. I think that you've seen several of the grants that I've put through on our McKinney-Vento program that services many families in the Rapid City area school district and all of our boundaries to ensure that we are assisting these students and taking away barriers that prevent them from coming to school so that we can educate them and help them be great citizens for the future.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Okay. The next one, I don't know if I'm jumping around here. Oh, that's it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
I do have an informational item on there, I thought. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Preliminary budget, Coy Sassy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In a really ominous sign, I already see a mistake that I've made on the very first page of this thing. So, you know, the rest of it should go really well, I'm sure. I'm not here to present the 2021-22 preliminary budget. I'm here to present to you the 22-23 preliminary budget, Madam Chair. And I certainly hope that I have the right, I do. Okay, so that was a mistake. This evening I'll be presenting the fiscal year 23 preliminary budget. As you all are aware, per South Dakota codified law, preliminary budget must be approved by the Board of Education by the end of May. After the preliminary budget is approved, the district then has technically until September 1st to pass a final budget, though we'll have our final budget prepared for the annual meeting. There's a lot of information in this presentation, so I'm going to move fairly quickly, try to talk fast. More than happy to answer any questions or have any discussion at the end. A very quick summary of the format of the presentation. First, I'm going to take you through some comparison data. Next, we're going to look at the summary budget information, then review revenue and expenditure highlights of our major funds. We're going to look at reserve projections for the general fund and capital outlay fund, and then lastly, I'll turn it over for discussion. So that's kind of the roadmap of where we're going, Board. These next few slides are really what I think of as baseline comparison data that the Board has been presented with now for several years. And really what this data does is help the Board to have an idea of what the district looks like on a big picture level at some of these major comparison points. So this first slide is highlighting the district's historical property valuation. Property tax, as we've discussed, makes up a significant portion of the district's revenue, about 35% of overall revenue. And ultimately, that property tax revenue is driven off of the district's property valuation. So this is a very important marker for the district. As you will see on this graph, the blue line represents the district's overall property assessment, and the orange bars represent the percentage change from year to year. So as you can see, over this last 7 to 8 year period from 2014 to present, the district's total valuation growth has consistently ranged between 4 to 6% per year. Now, the 2021 assessment, which is what will be paid in the next fiscal year, increased by 8%, taking the total valuation from $8.3 billion to just over $9 billion, so about a $700 million increase in property valuation year over year. Of course, for the district, that's a good marker. The district continues to see that aggressive property valuation growth trend, which in turn obviously helps to increase its revenue. This next slide highlights the enrollment trend of the district. Enrollment also is a very important factor for several district sources of revenue, primarily state aid to both the general fund and the special education fund. This chart shows multiple pictures of enrollment. The blue line is the funding count from the state aid fall enrollment count that takes place in September of each year. Now, enrollment is never a static figure. It changes literally daily. So often the figure captured on the state aid fall enrollment count can look very different than what the district's actual enrollment is throughout the year. Typically, that count increases after September and then throughout the rest of the year. So the orange line represents the district's high point enrollment for that given year. Now, the issue here is that if enrollment trends upward after the September state aid fall enrollment count date, none of those students are counted towards state aid funding. So essentially, the district is incurring costs to educate those students that it does not receive state aid funding for. And that's a very important factor in this graph. And then lastly, the gray line is the estimate from the MGT study. And for those members of the board that are not familiar with the MGT study, that was a master's facility study completed in 2016. And obviously a part of that study was looking at enrollment trends and estimates as we moved into the future. And as you can see, over the course of time, we have slowly and continually drifted away from that MGT estimate. And there's a lot of factors that are involved in that, but I will just make mention of that at this point. So as we've discussed, we see that after the enrollment decline experienced in 2019, there was a slight bounce back, and then it's really leveled off over the last couple of years. Understanding how important enrollment is for our revenue sources, I think it's important for me to mention that all of our budget estimates that you will see in this budget are based upon a flat state aid enrollment figure. Now, obviously, we hope for an enrollment rebound, and given the growth factors that we see in our community, like we just talked about with the major increase in valuation, it would support the idea that we will at some point see a rebound. However, we felt it best to be conservative and use a flat enrollment figure from year to year. Now, ultimately, as we've discussed, where that number actually lands in the fall will be very, very important for the district. This next slide is highlighting some general fund trends, and this is a very busy slide. Ultimately, it's looking at the allocation from the state aid formula in comparison to overall general fund revenues and expenditures. And what this chart shows is that in more recent years, as costs increase and the state aid formula fell behind, the total expenditures per student began to outpace the revenue. Thus, a deficit began. And you can see that that trend has become more prominent, especially in the last 4 to 5 years. The blue bar represents a per student state aid allocation. Now, state aid no longer allocates on a true per student basis, so that's not a perfect calculation, but part of what this graph is meant to convey is the proportion of state aid revenue in comparison to overall general fund revenue. And if we look at the situation in those terms, what we see is that state aid has continued to lag and fall behind in terms of its overall proportion of general fund revenue. Even in a year like fiscal year 23, where state aid was significantly increased, we still see that it makes up a smaller portion of the overall general fund revenue than it has in the past. So obviously, that is a trend that we need to keep our eye on. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about capital outlay flexibility. As you can see, usage was a little more sporadic in the early years of this graph from a historical perspective. We've had more consistent usage over the past few years. Now, in the current fiscal year, as you'll see, 2022, we have $6.25 million budgeted for the transfer. And obviously, we don't know exactly how much of that we're going to use until the end of the fiscal year. However, it appears from the year-to-date figures, we will come in well under that $6.25 million marker. As you can see, the good news is that we were able to reduce that transfer as we move into next year by about $750,000 down to the $5.5 million mark. That's a great development, and we'll talk more about that as we go throughout the presentation. Okay, with all that info in mind, let's look at a summary of the fiscal year 23 budget. So this is a fund comparison. We're looking at all funds, the latest revised budget for the current fiscal year 22 in the first column, the preliminary figures for fiscal year 23 in the second column, the dollar increase or decrease in the third column, and then the percentage increase or decrease in the fourth column. And here's a summary of that information. So the total budget, just over $245 million, which is about a $10 million decrease from the final fiscal year 22 budget. Now, similarly to what we've discussed in some of our current year budget discussions, I should mention at this point in our conversation that because of the injection of ESSER money and capital outlay certificate issuance and refinancing, some of our figures can be a little misleading. So as we discuss our major funds, I'll do my best to try to strip that back to what I feel is the foundation of our budget. Those other monies will come and go. They're for very specific purposes, but I feel it's very important we're focused on what is happening to the district's regular ongoing revenue and expenses. I will mention, I always like to talk a little bit about the premises that this budget was developed under. First of all budget estimates, as I discussed, are based on a flat year-over-year enrollment figure. We were able to find strategic budget reduction of about $1.5 million in the general fund, which, as you'll see as we talk through the general fund figures, really helped that fund. And then lastly, the premise of a 6% total wage increase. Now, you were all part of the negotiations conversation, so you understand that that is not necessarily how each of those wage increases worked out per group, but that is how we determine the allotments for negotiations. So in the end, the figures will be very, very similar in the way that they affect the budget. Open issues, really not many. Of course, as always, we're going to have some adjustments from the preliminary to the final budget based upon year-to-date figures, based upon how the current year wraps up. But really the primary thing will be rolling the actual compensation plan into the budget. At this point in time, we have an overall 6% increase built into the budget, but as we roll that final compensation plan into the budget, that'll show us exactly what that looks like. Again, I would assume that those figures will be very, very, very close based upon the idea that that's what we developed the allotments around, but that will really be the major adjustment as we move from the preliminary to the final budget. Okay, so with all that information, let's move into some highlights of our major funds, beginning with the general fund revenue highlights. So general fund total revenue projected at $103.7 million. That's about a 2.64% increase year over year. Looking at our major revenue sources and beginning with state aid, we are projecting $41.3 million in state aid, an increase of about $1.4 million or 3.63%. And again, I can't point out enough that that's based upon a flat state aid fall enrollment estimate of 12,711 students. The other major revenue source, property tax, projected at just over $42 million. This is an increase of $1.9 million or 4.75% year over year. So again, we see that valuation increase driving new revenue. And then highlighting other sources. So looking at the full picture here, general fund revenue, as we just talked about, 103.7. Regular general fund expenditures, as we will talk about here momentarily, projected at 108.9 million. So that leaves us with a deficit figure of about 5.2 million. We do have a capital outlay flexibility transfer scheduled of 5.5 million in this budget that you will see, and that's down again about 750K from the fiscal year 22 need of about 6.25 million. I should also point out under that deficit figure that is a reduction of almost $2 million year over year. The current year's deficit figure is 6.9 million. So moving into FY23, we have been able to reduce the general fund deficit nearly $2 million. Okay, flipping over and looking at expenditure highlights. Total expenditures, as I just said, projected at 102.3 million. That's an overall decrease of 808,000, or about 0.78%. Regular salaries and benefits projected at 81.5 million. That's an increase of 1.7%. I apologize, board. At some point in this PowerPoint, it appears that I have somehow mixed fiscal years.
It started on the first page.
Well, at this point, I have the correct slide in here. Madam Chair, may I ask for just a few minutes to take a look at my... I apologize.
All right.
Let me grab my computer very quickly. Sorry about that, Madam Chair and Board. I
Really
apologize.
quickly, to your credit, you clearly know your numbers well enough to
Well,
have caught it. Thank God for you.
Apparently, I somehow saved the document in the middle, didn't save some of the changes. Anyway, long story short, I understand where we went off board, and now I believe this is the correct document. So again, correct budget summary 22-23. General fund revenue highlights were correct. Okay, now the expenditure highlights are correct. So total expenditures in the general fund side, $108.9 million projection. Overall decrease, that is correct, of 1.6 million or 2%, and that's from the revised fiscal year 22 budget. This increase is really driven by the salary and benefit increases that we saw through negotiation. So total salaries increased in the general fund $3.6 million. Total benefits increased about $225,000. All other spending categories remain flat or decreased. So the expenditure increase, again, completely driven by salary and benefits. As I mentioned initially, we were able to find budget reductions of approximately 1.5 million, which helped to offset that overall salary and benefit expenditure increase. And again, as we discussed, we reduced the deficit in this budget in the general fund by nearly $2 million, and the capital outlay flexibility transfer by $750K. This is a graphical breakdown of general fund expenditures. This is fairly typical. What we would normally see, about 85% of the total expenditure budget dedicated to salaries and benefits, another 11.6 million to purchase services, just over 5 million to supplies, 1.4 million for property and liability insurance. And then we are carrying this green sliver as a $1 million contingency. And I've included that specifically for what we project to be the increase in health insurance premiums, the district share of health insurance premiums. And why I included that was that then we don't experience a $1 million increase as we move into the final budget. We'll pull that out of the contingency and budget into those line items for that health insurance premium increase. Very briefly, a general fund summary. So again, really want to highlight the idea that state aid and property tax revenue increases help to increase overall revenue. There was a major increase in salaries and benefits, but that was partly offset by other areas of budget reduction and being able to hold the budget flat in several areas. Again, we saw a decrease in the deficit and flexibility transfer. And as we have talked about for several years, enrollment is really going to be crucial, and not only crucial for multiple sources of revenue, but really crucial in the state aid side. And if the district could see an enrollment increase moving into next year, it would really help us capitalize on that state aid increase. So overall, we find the general fund in a much, much better position moving into next fiscal year than we have over the past several fiscal years. Moving on to capital outlay and discussing revenue highlights. So total revenue of about 81.6 million projected. This is a decrease of 14 million, but asterisk, because this is one of those deceiving areas, and it's deceiving due to some capital outlay certificate refunding revenue that we had been carrying and finally expended in fiscal year 22. So it appears like a revenue decrease, but it's just funds that we were already carrying, so truly no revenue decrease. Now, if we zoom in and we look at our regular ongoing sources of revenue to capital outlay, primarily property tax, which makes up about 98% of total capital outlay revenue, we see that that is projected at 26.6 million, which is an increase of 1.67 million, or about 6.7%. So again, that property valuation increase driving new revenue into our major funds. If we look at overall regular ongoing capital outlay revenue, we see an increase of about 1.4 million, or 5.4%. Moving over to the expenditure side, total expenditures projected at 81 million. Again, decrease of 14 million. Again, misleading because of that certificate refunding. Again, if we look at regular expenditures, we see a year-over-year increase of approximately $2 million. And the majority of that increase was in curriculum. We had several curriculum adoptions moving into FY23 and technology areas for some of the technology projects that will be taken on as we move into next year. Capital outlay flexibility transfer to the general fund decreased $750,000, so that again helped to offset some of the increases that we saw in those other areas. Here's a graphical breakdown of capital outlay expenditures. This is a bit of a deceiving picture as well. You'll see that the big chunk in gray here under capital acquisitions is making up a significant portion of overall expenditures. That is atypical of what we would normally see in the breakdown of those funds. And I made a note, 47.7 million of that 48.3 million in the capital acquisitions area is construction funds for the South Middle School project. So that's obviously highly specific usage of those funds. And then we see a more typical breakdown of expenditures in the other areas, about $11.3 million in supplies, $9.3 million in purchase services, $6.1 million in debt service funds, and then $5.8 million in transfers to other funds, and that is broken down between the flexibility transfer to the general fund and then a transfer of a $374,000 over to the capital outlay debt service fund. So capital outlay summary, major revenue source of property taxes continues to show strong increases consistently between that 4 to 6%, this year 8%. Community continues to grow, which benefits district revenue. Overall, capital outlay fund is in a strong position. It's carrying an adequate fund balance. One thing we do need to consider is the approximate $5 million pledge of cash to the South Middle School construction project. That will unlikely occur in next fiscal year, most likely in the first half of fiscal year 24, because that will be the last money that goes into the pot, so to speak, for that construction, but something to keep on our radar. And then ultimately, the decline in general fund flexibility is a major benefit for capital outlay. Those are resources that then can be moved around to true capital outlay purposes. So again, capital outlay in a positive spot as we move into next fiscal year. The last major fund I'm going to highlight is the Special Education Fund. So on the revenue side, we see total revenue just over $27 million. That's an increase of about $1.4 million, and I've asterisked that, and I will tell you just very shortly why that's asterisked. Property tax revenue, we're looking at a projection of about $15.2 million. That's an increase of $1.2 million or 9% year over year. State aid revenue projection just over $6 million. That is actually a decrease of $422,000 year over year. And I went into some detail on that in the executive summary, so hopefully you got a chance to look at that. I won't take up a ton of time, but I will mention the two major factors that play into that decrease are, one, that the state aid need fell due to enrollment, and two, local sources increased, which essentially then drives down the overall amount of state aid revenue that the district will receive. And I understand that sounds very counterintuitive, and I'm more than happy to have a long conversation about that at some point, at another point. But that's how that's affecting the special ed revenue right now. Here's where the asterisk figure comes in. So as of right now, the program will use about $1.8 million in reserve funds in fiscal year 23 to balance the budget. Now, I'm going to talk more about why that's happening on the expenditure side and then some further comments. So as we move over to expenditures, we see total expenditures just over $27 million. Again, an increase of $1.4 million or 5%. Very similarly to the general fund, that increase is entirely in salary and benefits. All other categories either flat or decreased year over year. Graphical representation of special education expenditures. So even more pronounced than in the general fund, we see that about 91% of this budget is dedicated specifically to salary and benefits. about $1.5 million to purchase services, and then about $700,000 to supplies. So the SPED summary, property tax revenue increased, but due to the declining state revenue, our overall revenue sources in special education actually fell year over year. Expenditure increase was driven specifically by salary and benefit increases. The deficit did increase from the previous year. However, I believe that this fund, more than most, will have some adjustments as we move into the final budget that will be necessary, which will change and I believe help to decrease and offset that deficit figure. So nothing to be alarmed about. Fairly typical, and again, if you read the executive summary, you can see some of the other issues that we were experiencing that led to this situation, but I don't think anything atypical in this situation. Very quickly, just highlighting some of the other funds, Capital Outlay Certificate Debt Service Fund, there was no change. Preschool Fund, we saw a 4% expenditure decrease. Student nutrition of all funds increased at the fastest rate from year to year with a 12% expenditure increase, due in part to salary and benefit increases, but primarily driven by the rapid inflation that we see in our environment and really the increasing food costs. So food costs from a year over year perspective increasing at almost 26%. And then lastly, health insurance fund. Of course, as we discussed, that increase is not finalized. However, we did include contingency funds, especially in the general fund, to help offset that anticipated increase. Very quickly to touch on reserve balances projections. So you see here in the general fund, the blue column is the actual reserve projection for the end of the fiscal year. The orange column is the target. And in the general fund, that target is based upon 12% of total general fund expenditures. So as you can see, next year we project the actual reserve to exceed the targeted amount. On the capital outlay side, more difficult to really pinpoint a target in capital outlay because it is such a different fund than the general fund in terms of its makeup and expenditures, really based more on projects and needs that the board anticipates as we move into the future. Over many years, the district has set that target at $15 million. And as you can see, our capital outlay reserve will exceed that by quite a lot as we move into next fiscal year. Okay, to summarize that huge amount of information I just threw at you, here are some final thoughts. I think this budget represents a real turning point for the district financially. There were major positive developments, the state prioritizing education and increasing state aid, and the continual growth of our community and its impact on valuations and property taxes is certainly helpful to the district's revenue picture. The fact that the district was able to increase all employee wages and address lingering compensation issues while simultaneously reducing the general fund deficit and thereby the capital outlay operating transfer, I believe sets the district on a new financial path as it moves into the future. As you've heard me say many times, that is not to say that it's ever easy or there still isn't hard work to do, but I think that next year will provide a platform for continued budget improvement. Again, there's still work to do. There's adjustments that need to be made between now and when the final budget is presented in July. And there will be adjustments, but I would not expect the final budget to vary significantly from what this preliminary budget looks like at this time. With that, Madam President, I'll turn it back for questions and discussion.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I do. Maybe not a question, but Coy, on your second slide,
yes, sir.
I'd probably like to come into your office, and I won't bore the board's time on my personal tutorial, but just an explanation. It was interesting to me to see that in the capital outlay flexibility in 2014 was zero. Yeah, I think it's actually the second slide, but anyway, it was zero. It went up, and I think in 2017 it went back down to zero. And so I'd just like to have a conversation about that process and how we can get it back down to we're at 0.
Agreed, sir. That is the goal.
Any other comments or questions? All right. You're off
Thank
the
you,
hook.
Board. I'm sorry about the
No.
mix-ups and hold-ups. My apologies. And thank you to Shirley. You'll be missed. The board reps, you'll be missed. Dr. Simon, thanks for everything.
All right, on to the superintendent report. Go ahead, Dr. Simon.
Thank you, President Thomas. I am going to go back a ways just for a moment because I wasn't at our last board meeting. I was out of state at my dad's 80th birthday celebration. But I do want to talk about April 28th because that evening I attended Central Theater's performance of Alice in Wonderland, and it was absolutely wonderful. So thank you for allowing me for that step back. Last Tuesday night, I attended my final Student Voice Forum meeting, and I have truly enjoyed these meetings with students. I have left every meeting feeling inspired by our youth. Last Wednesday afternoon and Thursday morning, we hosted staff from the South Dakota Department of Education as they came here on a field trip to learn more about our Rapid City area schools. Highlights included a tour and discussion at General Beetles, South, and Canyon Lake. And kudos and a big thank you to our leaders and staff at these schools. Last Thursday afternoon, as Director Talley mentioned previously, I attended a ceremony at the South Dakota Air and Space Museum and accepted a check from Northrop Grumman for $35,000 to support our STEM and STEAM work. These funds will pay for middle and high school students to attend science and STEAM camps at the School of Mines this summer. Last Friday morning, I visited Central's Academy and Pathway classes and had the opportunity to talk with both students and staff about how things are going and what they're experiencing. And there truly is some excellent work happening in these classes. I particularly enjoyed speaking with aspiring teachers. They were all seniors taking the Pathways class that is typically for juniors and will roll out to all juniors next year that are interested in education as a profession. But these students were taking it as an elective, and they were really excited to tell me about the area of education that they look forward to studying when they go to college in the fall. This morning, I attended our final principal meetings of the year where principals shared about a key success with their staff this year. I'm really proud of the work our principals, teachers, and staff have accomplished this school year, and it was great to celebrate with them today. They brought some good data, and we're really seeing good things happen educationally for our kids. Finally, I want to once again thank our 3 student representatives for your service and your dedication to your role this year. It has truly been a pleasure to get to know you and to work with you, and I wish you all the best in this next chapter of your life. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Simon. Okay, on to other. Does anybody have any other?
Yes, I do, of course.
Go ahead, Troy.
I wanted to address one of the speakers during the public comment, and I wish, Madam President, there was a way that we can be more responsive in the agenda to those comments. Maybe there is, maybe there's not, but I wanted to address one of the speakers, and they're not here. I wanted to say that one of the reasons why I don't respond to all emails is, number one, I don't know who the person is that is emailing. More importantly, I don't know what agenda they have in emailing me. And third, I do not trust or feel comfortable with the response that I give a person that emails, that won't be used against me in public media and in newspaper and all those things. But I was willing to give my personal card to the individual that spoke about not being contacted. My name is public. My phone number is public. I pastor at Faith Temple Church. You can call my secretary and make appointment, and I will talk to anybody about any subject. My other thing is I am so saddened to hear about Shirley leaving. When I first came on the board and I went to the building and I would ask questions of people, the answer was, well, you have to ask Shirley. Then I would ask somebody else something, and they would say, you'd have to ask Shirley. And I think it was that time you were having your knee surgery, so you weren't there. So some of the things that I needed could not happen until Shirley got back. And so personally, I will miss you. Just tonight, before I walked in, I was supposed to be here to take pictures, and I was in the elevator, and I got a phone call, and who was it? Shirley, looking to see where I was as I walked in the door. So I am deathly terrified of who's going to hold my hand and take care of me when you're gone. So thank you. I appreciate it greatly.
I would give the sentiments, too, that she does a very good job herding cats. Thank you, Shirley. All right, we will be going into executive
I just
session.
have
Go
one
ahead,
more
sorry.
question. I know during public comment, some people were asking us about our plans for hiring an interim superintendent, and I think it would be a good idea to, I don't know, put out a press release or something, since we have candidates and we have interviews already scheduled for the end of the month, just so that there's a piece of information available to the public.
I was going to comment on that at other as well. But I thought maybe a statement would be a little bit better. I'm working with Shane right now to get a board, on our board page, a spot where we can have board news, and maybe an area where we can comment to the comments. I am available, or whatever it is that we need to say. Sometimes we can't respond to some of these questions because we certainly don't want the public to feel like they were wrong in their statements, or that they didn't have the information that we don't want anybody to feel stupid for bringing what they really truly feel is important to us, where some of the things that they say are just factually not quite right, and so this isn't necessarily the place to say that. So certainly in an email, I've jotted down some of the emails of the speakers and plan to respond to them myself, but also as far as the superintendent and assistant superintendent, part of the reason we don't have a search firm is because, February and March is not a good time to be having searches for those, because we would be looking at, as the term went, the bottom of the barrel and have to start over anyway. And the time to look for that and have a company do that is August, September, October, as we did when we voted on Dr. Simon coming in. It was about October or November. So February and March is not a good time for that. But that was something I thought we could put on the board page as board news and just give an update to the applications that we do have and the interviews coming up.
I think if it would be okay, it would be good for Caitlin to put it in the board brief that she'll send out in the next couple of days, just that we have interviews scheduled.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Amy. Any other comments? Others? Okay. All right, we will be going into executive session. There will be no action taken afterwards for SDCL 1-25-2.1. Thank you for everyone coming, and for those that stayed to the end, thank you. Troy and Amy. All in favor, aye. All those opposed?
I think there's a sense of dignity in not.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, congratulations. I'll see you at graduation.
Yes, I will.